The metallic halls of Space Station Frontier 7 buzzed with nervous energy. Jack Stone walked through the crowded corridor, his boots making soft thumping sounds against the steel floor. Messages and alerts flashed across the giant screens lining the walls, but one kept repeating. Emergency distress Sujanel. Research Vessel Horizon. Nini XUS ZCTR. Jack ran his hand through his messy brown hair as he approached the station's command center. At 35, he wasn't the youngest xenobiologist on the station, but he had earned a reputation for doing things differently. While others studied alien life from the safety of their labs, Jack preferred getting up close with the creatures he studied. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 4 alien council members and the human station commander stood around a holographic display. The image showed a ship floating dead in space, its running lights still blinking. "Ah, Stone. Good timing," said Commander Wells, her gray uniform crisp and neat as always. "We need your expertise on this one." The tallest council member, a blue-skinned alien named Rax, turned to face Jack. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "The situation is grave. The research vessel Horizon went silent 3 days ago while exploring the Nexus sector. Their last transmission mentioned a large predatory life form." Jack stepped closer to the hologram, studying the ship's position. "The Nexus sector, that's largely unexplored territory." "For good reason," said another council member, whose green scales shimmered under the room's bright lights. "That sector has claimed 12 exploration vessels in the past 5 years. No survivors." Commander Wells pressed a button, and the hologram changed to show a blurry image. Something dark moved across the screen, too fast for the camera to capture clearly. This was the last video transmission from the Horizon. "Whatever's out there, it's big, it's smart, and it's lethal." Jack leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the image. Where others saw a threat, he saw something fascinating. The way the creature moved suggested intelligence, purpose. "Has anyone tried communicating with it?" The council members exchanged worried looks. Rax spoke up, his voice heavy with concern. "Communication. Stone, this creature has killed every being it's encountered. The Galactic Council has classified it as a Class 1 threat, the highest danger level possible, which is exactly why we need to understand it better," Jack argued. He turned to face the group, his eyes bright with excitement. "Look at its movement patterns. This isn't mindless aggression. There's intelligence there." Commander Wells frowned. "Jack, I know that look. Whatever you're thinking." "Send me," Jack interrupted. "Let me investigate the Horizon. If there's a chance to understand this creature, to communicate with it." "Absolutely not," Rax declared. "We've lost enough lives to this monster. The Council recommends quarantining the entire sector." Jack stood straighter, his voice firm but calm. "With all due respect, that's exactly the kind of thinking that's led to countless missed opportunities. Humanity has a long history of succeeding where others see only danger. We turned wolves into companions, crossed oceans when people thought the world was flat, and reached for the stars when they said it was impossible." The room fell silent. The council members looked at each other, their expressions a mix of doubt and curiosity. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their unusual approaches to problems, and their successes were hard to argue with. Commander Wells studied Jack for a long moment. "You understand this is completely voluntary. If you go out there, we can't guarantee your safety." Jack nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. The best discoveries never came with guarantees. After hours of debate and preparation, Jack stood in the station's hangar, ready to board his small research vessel. The Council had given him basic supplies and strict orders to maintain constant communication. Commander Wells approached him one last time. "Jack," she said quietly, "I know you see something in this creature that others don't. But please remember, your life is worth more than any discovery." He checked his equipment one last time and smiled at her. "Sometimes understanding is worth the risk. Besides, He added with a grin, humanity didn't get where it is by playing it safe. As his ship detached from the station and set course for the Nexus sector, Jack felt a familiar excitement building in his chest. Where others saw a monster, he saw a mystery waiting to be solved. Whatever this creature was, he would find a way to understand it, or die trying. Little did Jack know, he was about to challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about both humanity and the mysterious predator that awaited him in the darkness of space. The research vessel Horizon loomed before Jack's ship like a ghost in space. Its hull gleamed under the distant starlight, showing no obvious damage. Jack carefully guided his ship toward the main airlock, his heart beating faster with each passing moment. "Frontier 7, this is Stone," he reported through his comm system. "I'm preparing to dock with the Horizon. No signs of external damage visible." "Received, Stone." Commander Wells' voice crackled through the speaker. "Remember protocol. Full suit, weapons armed, and continuous communication." Jack smiled to himself as he sealed his helmet. He carried the required weapon, but he hoped he wouldn't need it. Something about this situation felt different from standard hostile creature encounters. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Jack entered the Horizon. His helmet lights cut through the darkness, revealing an eerily undisturbed interior. No signs of struggle, no blood, no broken equipment. Just silence. "This is unusual," Jack muttered, making his way to the bridge. Most predator attacks show signs of violence. This looks more like the crew simply walked away. He reached the bridge and found it just as pristine as the rest of the ship. Settling into the captain's chair, Jack accessed the ship's logs. The main screen flickered to life, showing the captain's last entries. Ship's log, day 147. The captain's tired face appeared on screen. "It's out there again, watching us. The crew is terrified. This creature, it's not like anything we've encountered before. It doesn't just hunt, it studies us, tests our defenses, learns." Jack leaned forward, intrigued. The next log entry showed the captain looking more worried. "Day 148. We've sealed all entrances, but it doesn't matter. Somehow it gets in, takes things, leaves things, like it's experimenting with us. The crew wants to abandon ship, but I fear that's exactly what it's waiting for." The final log entry was different. The captain's face showed not fear, but wonder. "Day 149. I saw it clearly today. Beautiful and terrible. Not just big, enormous. Black as space itself, with eyes that understand. This isn't just a predator. There's intelligence there. If only we could." The log ended abruptly. Jack checked the timestamp. 3 days ago. He switched to the security cameras and began reviewing the footage. "Frontier 7, you need to see this," Jack said, transmitting the feed. "Look at how it moves." The footage showed a massive shape moving through the ship's corridors. Dark scales shifted like oil on water, making it hard to focus on its exact form. But its movements were deliberate, purposeful. In one scene, it encountered a locked door, and instead of breaking it down, it studied the control panel. Within minutes, it had figured out how to open it. "Fascinating," Jack whispered. "It's not just hunting. It's exploring, learning." "Stone, this is exactly why the creature is so dangerous," Commander Wells warned. "It learns our weaknesses." Or, Jack countered, "it's trying to understand us." He continued watching the footage, noting how the creature investigated everything it encountered. It picked up tools, examined computers, even tried to use some of the simpler devices. A sudden sound made Jack freeze. Something moved in the corridor outside the bridge. His helmet lights reflected off a smooth, dark surface that quickly disappeared around a corner. "Stone, your heart rate just spiked," Commander Wells said urgently. "What's happening?" Jack spoke softly, keeping his eyes on the doorway. "It's here, and it's curious about me. Get out of there now," Wells ordered. "That's a direct command." But Jack didn't move. He could feel it watching him. Instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of connection. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his pack and pulled out a simple puzzle cube he had brought along. A human toy that required solving a pattern. With deliberate movements, he placed the cube on the console in front of him and pushed it forward. Then he waited. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness moved into the doorway. Two eyes, gleaming with intelligence, fixed on Jack. They shifted to the cube, then back to him. "Hello," Jack said quietly, staying perfectly still. "I think it's time we properly met." The creature moved forward, its massive form becoming clearer in the bridge's dim light. As it approached the cube, Jack smiled behind his helmet. Where others had seen a monster, he saw something else. A chance to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its ability to reach out and understand the unknown. The creature's massive form filled the bridge doorway as it studied the puzzle cube. Jack held his breath, watching as it extended a sleek, dark limb toward the toy. The movement was careful, almost gentle, nothing like the violent predator everyone feared. "Stone." Commander Wells' voice cut through his calm. "Get out of there immediately." Jack kept his voice low and calm. "No. Look at this." He activated his helmet camera. "It's not attacking. It's thinking." The creature picked up the cube with surprising delicacy. Its claws, each longer than Jack's forearm, manipulated the toy with precise movements. Within minutes, it had solved the puzzle. "Incredible," Jack whispered. The creature's eyes met his, and he felt a deep intelligence in that gaze. Then, just as quietly as it had appeared, it melted back into the shadows, taking the cube with it. Back on his ship that night, Jack made his report. The creature shows clear signs of advanced problem-solving abilities. Its movements suggest not just intelligence, but curiosity. That doesn't change protocol. Rax's stern voice came through the comm. "The Council orders you to plant deterrent devices and leave the sector immediately." Jack looked at the collection of items he had prepared. More puzzles, simple tools, and various safe objects from Earth. "Request denied," he said firmly. "I'm implementing a new approach." "Stone, this is madness." Wells protested. "You can't just." "Actually, I can." Jack's voice was determined. "My mission parameters allow for experimental first contact procedures. I'm going to leave gifts." Over the next few days, Jack carefully placed items throughout the horizon. Each morning, he would find the previous day's gifts moved or altered. The creature was learning, experimenting, and most importantly, communicating. On the fourth day, Jack found something new. Where he had left a drawing pad and simple markers, he discovered strange marks on the paper. They weren't random. They showed clear patterns, deliberate attempts at communication. "Look at this." Jack transmitted images to Frontier 7. "It's trying to talk to us." "Stone." Wells' voice was heavy with concern. "The Council has reviewed your reports. They're sending ships to terminate the creature. You have 6 hours to clear the sector." Jack felt his chest tighten with anger. "You can't do this. We're on the verge of something unprecedented." "The decision is final," Rax declared. "This creature has killed too many. We cannot risk." "Has anyone actually seen it kill?" Jack interrupted. "Have you found any bodies? Any signs of violence? Or did ships just go missing after crews panicked and abandoned them?" Silence filled the comm channel. "I thought so," Jack continued. "This species isn't aggressive. It's defensive. Scared. And we've been threatening it with weapons and deterrence since first contact." As if to prove his point, Jack heard movement behind him. The creature had entered his ship, something it had never done before. Jack turned slowly, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. The creature carried one of his puzzles in its claws. But this time, it had modified the toy, making it more complex. It placed the altered puzzle before Jack, its eyes watching expectantly. Jack smiled and reached for the puzzle. You've been learning about us, haven't you? While everyone was busy being afraid, you were trying to understand. The creature made a soft clicking sound, moving closer to watch as Jack examined its modification. For the first time, Jack noticed patterns in its scales, not just black, but swirling with subtle colors that shifted like the northern lights on Earth. "I'm naming you Aurora," he said softly, "and I'm not going anywhere." His comm crackled. "Stone, multiple ships are entering the sector. Armed ships. Get out of there now." Jack stood up slowly, positioning himself between Aurora and the ship's viewport, where the approaching vessels would soon be visible. "No," he said firmly. "If they want to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first." Aurora tilted its head, studying Jack's protective stance. Then, to Jack's amazement, it moved to stand beside him, its massive form a silent statement of trust and partnership. "Commander," Jack's voice was steady, "tell those ships to stand down. I'm about to prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our weapons or our fear. It's in our ability to reach out and make friends with the things that scare us most." Jack spent the next several hours watching Aurora move around his ship. The armed vessels were still 12 hours away, giving him precious time to understand his new friend better. Every movement Aurora made told a story, if you knew how to read it. "Look at this behavior," Jack spoke into his recorder, keeping his voice soft. "When Aurora feels safe, the colors in its scales flow like water. When alert, they freeze into sharp patterns. It's not just beautiful, it's communication." Aurora approached the ship's main viewport, pressing one massive claw gently against the reinforced glass. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly into the darkness. The creature made a low humming sound, almost like a whale's song. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" Jack moved closer, studying Aurora's shifting patterns. The creature turned its head toward a distant point in space, then back to Jack. The patterns in its scales formed spinning circles, like maps of solar systems. Jack pulled up the star charts on his computer. "Show me again," he encouraged. Aurora repeated the movement, and suddenly Jack understood. "Computer, show historical records of this sector, past 50 years. The screen filled with data. 50 years ago, this sector had been busy with early space exploration. Then, suddenly, all traffic stopped. Ships began disappearing. The sector was labeled dangerous and abandoned. That's when they started hunting you, wasn't it?" Jack said quietly. "The early explorers saw you and panicked. They attacked first." Aurora's scales rippled with dark, sharp patterns, confirmation of painful memories. The creature moved to the ship's computer and, with surprising precision, began operating the controls. Star maps appeared on screen, showing dozens of hidden locations throughout the sector. "These are your homes," Jack realized. "Your whole species. You've been hiding here all this time, protecting your territory because you thought every ship meant danger." He paused, thinking. "And you've been studying us, learning about us, trying to understand if we were all threats." The comm system crackled. "Stone, this is Commander Wells. The Council ships are maintaining their course. They're not stopping." Jack looked at Aurora, whose scales now showed patterns he recognized as concern. "You understand what's coming, don't you? But you're still here, still trying to communicate." He smiled. "Because you're curious about us, just like we're curious about you." Moving to his storage compartment, Jack pulled out an old tablet containing videos from Earth. He played footage of humans interacting with once feared animals: wolves, bears, sharks. "Look," he said, holding it up. "We've done this before. Turned fear into friendship." Aurora watched intently, its massive head tilting as it processed the images. Then, to Jack's amazement, it began creating patterns in its scales that matched the movements of the animals in the videos. It was learning, adapting, trying to show that it understood. "Commander," Jack called over the comm, "I need you to see something." He transmitted live footage of Aurora mimicking the videos. "This isn't just intelligence. This is active learning, communication, desire for understanding. We can't let them hurt this species. Wells was quiet for a long moment. Jack, I believe you. But the Council ships won't stop just because we ask. They're convinced these creatures are a threat to galactic safety. Aurora suddenly moved with purpose, operating the ship's controls again. New coordinates appeared on screen. A hidden location deep in the sector. The creature's scales showed a repeating pattern, like a heartbeat. It's showing us its home, Jack breathed, where its family is. He turned to Aurora. You trust me enough to show me this. The creature gently touched Jack's shoulder with one claw, a gesture it had learned from the videos of human interaction. Its scales rippled with warm, flowing patterns. Commander, Jack's voice was firm with determination. Tell the Council ships they're about to make a horrible mistake. These creatures aren't monsters. They're refugees, survivors, and they've been waiting 50 years for someone to just try understanding them instead of fearing them. Aurora's scales brightened, creating patterns that looked like stars and ships moving peacefully together. Jack smiled, recognizing hope when he saw it. This is what humanity does best, he said softly. We don't just explore space, we build bridges across it, even if those bridges lead to the most unexpected places. Time was running out. The Council's warships would arrive in less than an hour, and Jack knew he needed a way to communicate quickly and clearly with Aurora. He sat cross-legged on the floor of his ship, facing the massive creature. We need a better way to talk, Jack said, making deliberate hand gestures as he spoke. Simple signs for simple ideas. Aurora watched intently, its scales shifting in thoughtful patterns. Jack pointed to himself, then made a walking motion with his fingers. Aurora's scales rippled, and it copied the gesture with its claws. Good, Jack smiled. He pointed to Aurora, then made the same walking motion. The creature's eyes brightened with understanding. Over the next 30 minutes, they developed a basic sign language. A hand over the heart meant friend. A finger pointing to the stars meant travel. Crossed arms meant danger. Aurora learned quickly, its natural intelligence matching Jack's determination. Commander Wells, Jack called over the comm. You need to see this. He transmitted footage of their communication session. We've developed a way to talk. Aurora's species. They call themselves the Star Weavers. They've been protecting ancient ruins in this sector. Ruins that could teach us about the galaxy's history. Jack. Wells' voice was tense. The Council ships are refusing all communication. They're coming in hot. Aurora's scales flashed with sharp, worried patterns. It made the sign for danger, then pointed to the stars. Jack checked his sensors. 5 heavily armed vessels approaching fast. They're not just coming to drive you away, Jack realized, his heart sinking. They're coming to destroy your whole species. He made the signs for friend and protect, pointing to Aurora. The creature's response surprised him. It moved to the ship's computer, and using their new sign language combined with gestures, showed Jack a hidden network of caves and tunnels throughout the sector, places where its people could hide. No, Jack said firmly, standing up. You shouldn't have to hide anymore. This ends today. He opened a channel to all approaching ships. This is Jack Stone. I am positioning my vessel between you and the sector. If you want to commit genocide against an intelligent, peaceful species, you'll have to go through a human first. Stone, you are ordered to stand down. A cold voice responded. This is your final warning. Aurora moved beside Jack, its massive form filling half the bridge. It made the sign for friend, then added a new gesture, its claws forming shapes that looked like the paths of planets orbiting a sun. It's showing us how everything's connected, Jack said in wonder. How we're all part of the same cosmic dance. He turned to his comm. Council ships, hold position. I'm sending you proof that we're making a terrible mistake. The lead ship responded with a weapons lock warning. Aurora suddenly straightened, its scales blazing with purpose. It made rapid signs to Jack. Danger, friends, come together. Then it sent out a complex series of sounds through the ship's communication system. The space around them seemed to shift. Dark shapes emerged from hidden points all around the sector. Dozens of star weavers, each as magnificent as Aurora. They moved with grace, surrounding the approaching council ships. My God, Wells breathed over the comm. There are so many of them. The council ships froze, their weapons still armed but now facing impossible odds. Jack smiled and made the sign for peace, which Aurora repeated with its massive claws. Now then, Jack broadcast to everyone. Let's try this again. I'd like to introduce you to the Star Weavers, the true guardians of this sector. They've been watching us, learning about us, waiting for someone to try understanding instead of shooting. Aurora's scales rippled with colors that matched the starlight, creating patterns that looked like bridges between stars. It made the sign for friend, then added their newly created sign for future. This is what humanity does, Jack said proudly. We don't just explore space, we build bridges across it, even when those bridges have to span the gap between our greatest fears and our highest hopes. The council ships powered down their weapons. In that moment, as Aurora's people moved in peaceful patterns around them, Jack knew he had done what humans do best. Turned an enemy into a friend, and fear into understanding. The council ships hung motionless in space, surrounded by dozens of star weavers. Their dark forms moved in perfect harmony, scales shimmering with patterns that seemed to mirror the stars themselves. Jack watched from his ship's viewport, Aurora at his side. Your people are beautiful, he said softly, using their sign language. Aurora's scales rippled with happiness, showing swirling patterns that Jack had learned meant pride and gratitude. The comm system crackled. This is Captain Reed of the Council Defense Force, a stern voice announced. Our orders are clear. These creatures are classified as maximum-level threats. We cannot allow. Look around you, Captain, Jack interrupted. You're surrounded by beings who could have destroyed you the moment you entered their space. Instead, they're dancing. He gestured to the Star Weavers, who were indeed moving in complex, graceful patterns around the council ships. Does this look like the behavior of mindless killers to you? Aurora moved to the computer console, its claws typing with surprising speed. Images appeared on screen. Ancient ruins hidden throughout the sector, star maps showing safe travel routes, and detailed studies of various species' behaviors. 50 years of careful observation and learning. They've been protecting this knowledge, Jack explained, broadcasting the images to all ships, waiting for someone who would understand its value instead of just trying to claim it by force. The Star Weavers began creating new patterns with their scales, synchronized across all of them. The combined effect was breathtaking. A living star map showing the history of their species' encounters with early explorers. Captain, Commander Wells' voice joined the channel. I'm reviewing the historical data. There's something you need to see. She paused. The first attacks in this sector, they weren't from the Star Weavers. They were from mining ships trying to force their way into protected ruins. Aurora's scales flickered with old pain, but it made the sign for hope, then friend. Around them, the other Star Weavers began copying the gesture, dozens of massive, powerful beings making the simple human sign for friendship. This is unprecedented, another council ship reported. Their level of coordination, their intelligence, we've completely misunderstood them. Jack smiled. That's what fear does. It makes us see monsters where there are only neighbors we haven't properly met yet. He turned to Aurora. Show them what you showed me. Show them why this sector is so important. Aurora sent out a complex series of sounds, and the Star Weavers moved in perfect unison. They created a massive pattern with their bodies and scales, forming what looked like a three-dimensional map. Ancient trade routes, long-lost civilizations, and astronomical phenomena, unknown to modern science, all appeared in living light. My God, Captain Reed whispered. They're not just guardians. They're historians, archivists. The greatest library in known space, Jack agreed. and they're willing to share it with friends. He made the sign for peace, which Aurora and all the Star Weavers mirrored. The choice is yours, Captain. Do we make history today as the people who nearly destroyed a remarkable civilization, or as the ones who helped bridge the gap between our peoples? The silence stretched for what felt like hours. The council ships remained powered up, their weapons still armed. Then, slowly, their running lights changed from red to green, the universal sign of peaceful intentions. "Stand down weapons," Captain Reed ordered. "All ships, power down attack systems." He cleared his throat. "Mr. Stone, perhaps you and your friend would be willing to help us establish proper diplomatic contact." Aurora's scales erupted in patterns of joy, creating ripples of color that spread to all the other Star Weavers. The sight of so many supposedly deadly predators expressing pure happiness made Jack laugh out loud. "You know what's funny?" he said to Aurora, using both signs and words. "Everyone thought you were the most dangerous thing in space, but in the end, the most powerful weapon here wasn't claws or teeth or guns." He touched his head, then his heart. It was this, and this, understanding and compassion. Aurora copied the gesture, adding their sign for future. Around them, stars twinkled and Star Weavers danced, celebrating the moment when fear finally gave way to friendship. 3 months after the standoff in the Nexus sector, Space Station Frontier 7 looked very different. The once quiet halls now buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy came to learn from the Star Weavers. And at the center of it all, Jack Stone and Aurora worked together, showing everyone that the greatest discoveries often come from unexpected friendships. "The translation program is working better than ever," Jack reported to Commander Wells, standing in the station's new observation deck. Through the massive window, they could see Star Weavers teaching young scientists their sign language, their scales creating beautiful patterns that matched their lessons. Who would have thought? Wells smiled, watching a group of alien children fearlessly approaching a Star Weaver. 3 months ago, this sector was considered too dangerous to enter. Now it's becoming the greatest center of learning in known space. Aurora glided into the room, its scales shimmering with greeting patterns that everyone on the station had learned to recognize as a friendly hello. It made the sign for news, then excited. "What is it, friend?" Jack asked, both signing and speaking. Aurora moved to the computer terminal, pulling up images from deep within the sector. The Star Weavers had discovered more ruins, but these were different. The architecture suggested they were built by space-faring creatures that moved like the Star Weavers themselves. "Their ancestors," Jack breathed. "You found your own history." Aurora's scales rippled with joy, then formed the pattern they now used for human friend. A combination of swirling colors that looked like a handshake made of starlight. It then showed images of other ruins, other histories, all preserved by its people through the centuries. "The Council wants to officially recognize the Star Weavers as the master archivists of the galaxy," Wells announced. "They're proposing to establish a permanent academy here, where people can come to learn not just history, but understanding between species." Jack watched as Aurora demonstrated to a group of scientists how Star Weavers navigated through space, their natural ability to sense stellar phenomena making them incredible guides for deep space exploration. "We were so wrong about them," he said softly. "We thought they were the galaxy's most lethal predators, but they're actually its greatest teachers." More Star Weavers arrived at the station each day, their initial shyness replaced by eager curiosity about other species. They had developed new signs and scale patterns specifically for teaching, making their vast knowledge accessible to anyone willing to learn. "The Academy needs a director," Wells said casually, looking at Jack. "Someone who can bridge the gap between species, someone who sees friendship where others see fear." Before Jack could respond, Aurora made the sign for future, then family, then pointed to Jack. Its scales showed the pattern for question. "Are you asking me to stay?" Jack grinned. "To help run this place." Aurora's scales lit up with what everyone now recognized as laughter. It made a series of signs, Human friend, teach others, explore together. I think that's a yes. Wells chuckled. Jack looked around the observation deck. Young star weavers were learning alongside beings from 100 worlds. In one corner, a star weaver was teaching a group about ancient navigation techniques. In another, scientists were studying the star weaver's unique biology, learning how their scales could process and display such complex information. You know what the best part is? Jack said, making the sign for understanding. Every person who comes here, every species that learns from the star weavers, they all go home with a story about how humans got it right. How we looked past the fear and found the friendship. Aurora's scales created a pattern they'd never seen before. A perfect blend of stellar cartography and human sign language. Science and friendship merged into one beautiful display. That's what humanity does best, Jack said proudly. We don't just explore space. We help everyone else see its wonders too. Even if those wonders come with claws and scales and a reputation for being deadly. As if to emphasize his point, a young star weaver floated past the window, playing a game of tag with alien children whose parents once would have fled in terror. Their laughter echoed through the station's halls, a sound that represented everything Jack had hoped to achieve. So, he turned to Aurora, signing as he spoke, ready to start teaching the galaxy how to turn monsters into friends. Aurora's scales blazed with joy as it made their special sign for partnership, a pattern that meant together we make the impossible possible.